Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Voices of Forestry podcast. I'm your host, Seth Stevenson, the Communications Coordinator with the Arkansas Forestry Association. Today, we are back with two Voices of Forestry to talk about carbon credits as an alternate income source. I know we've talked about carbon credits before in regards to the market evolution and just what exactly they are. We're kind of honing in a little bit more on this specific aspect of it as an alternate income source for landowners. Now, before I introduce my guest this month, let me give a special shout out and thank you to this month's sponsor, Neeley Forestry Service, for their continued support of the show. We're going to hear a little bit more from them later on in this episode. But for now, let me introduce my guests today. We have JD Neeley, the president of Neeley Forestry Service, and Tim White joins us yet again. He is the VP of Forestry over at NativState. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me.
Well, good morning, Seth, and glad we could be here and join you.
Good morning.
I know it was a bit of a quick turnaround from I think, JD, I talked to you about this on Monday, and here we are on a Thursday. But I'm glad that you guys were able to get this going pretty quick. Well, JD, let's start with you. I know, Tim, we had you on, I think it was in January. We got your history, so we'll kind of leave you out of this part for a second. But JD, can you just kind of give us your professional history and let the people know who you are?
Absolutely. Again, great to be here, Seth, this morning. This year actually marks my 40th anniversary of graduating from UAM. Tim, you were maybe a few years ahead.
A couple years, yeah.
But looking back, it's been a fun ride. Actually started at Neeley Forestry. My father had founded the company back in '72, managing lands in South Arkansas, and we've been blessed and have grown. Now work in Northeast Texas, South Arkansas predominantly, and in Louisiana. We've got a staff of 4 foresters besides myself, and really offer a traditional blend of forest management for private lands, real estate services, and appraisal work. Those are our 3 hats we wear, and one of our foresters is a wildlife biologist, and we do have some wildlife aspects that we help landowners with as well. But anyway, again, good to be here, and it's a little brief history. We here in the fall, looking forward to hunting season's about here, and there's a little fall tint in the air today after that big rain and a cool down. So I'm looking forward to a little hunting in the days ahead.
Well, and I would be a little remiss, JD, if I didn't mention that you just finished up your stint at Game and Fish Commission, correct?
Yes, I just finished and was honored to be able to serve the state 7 years as a commissioner. And just wrapped that up in the end of June, and now have been officially put on the Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission as a commissioner, and so looking forward to serving some more in the line of the Heritage Commission, which predominantly is in charge of management of rare and endangered plant species habitats in numerous locations throughout the state. So it really is going to be a continued effort of conservation in a little different niche. Looking forward to rejoining, getting to know Jen Ballard, who is now the director of the Heritage, and she was at Game and Fish for really 6 of the 7 years that I was on the commission. So she is really smart, sharp, and is doing a great job over there. So I enjoy service. So anyway, I'm going to continue to do that.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. That's news to me. I didn't realize that you had been appointed to that commission.
Just got that about a month ago.
Okay, cool, great. Well, guys, let's kind of hop into our main topic for the day. And what I want to do is we may be kind of double dipping into some of the past episodes, but I want to just remind our guests what kind of carbon credits are. If you want a detailed explanation or more detailed conversation about that topic, we have a couple of episodes, dear listener, that you can go back and take a look at. But Tim, we should probably start with you. Can you just explain to us, if you can, what exactly we mean when we're talking about carbon credits?
Well, textbook definition or close to it is basically a metric ton of carbon that has been sequestered within the tree. It's tied to weight. Credits are measured in metric tons. And obviously wood is measured in weight too. So there's a direct relationship from the weight of the wood standing in the forest to the amount of carbon that's been sequestered. This isn't, a carbon credit is basically a product of measurement. So just because you have trees, yes, you do have carbon sequestered, but it has not been quantified. The methodologies that we use, and there's a few, actually set out the procedure for quantifying. Okay, how do you determine that? And that's pretty important, especially to the private landowner, when you start talking about carbon credits and how many and what they're worth and all that. The methodology that's used to determine that credit is pretty critical. But that's basically it. It's directly related. So in short, the more wood you got standing, the more credits you got.
Okay.
Pretty much.
But and correct me if I'm wrong here, and this may be a chicken and the egg type of situation, but you don't technically have a credit until that quantification has occurred.
Correct. You don't have something that is saleable, transferable, negotiable. So a carbon credit actually has a number. They're issued by the registry, and there's several different registries, and they issue, a serial number, just like you would issue a security, and companies or individuals can buy those credits to offset their emissions. But you're right. You have to have a methodology to define that first.
And so, Tim, let's kind of continue down this path, if you don't mind. What is it that landowners need to know when it comes to carbon credits? I know, again, we've probably kind of talked about this a little bit, but what do they need to know in regards to this?
Well, I don't think this podcast is long enough, so I'll try to be brief. The most important thing they need to know is that the methodology that we've talked about just now matters. Be very diligent in finding out how these carbon credits how they're established, how they're created, how they're quantified is probably a better word. There's 170 different types of carbon credits. So it's easy to see why landowners would be confused. There's two, afforestation and IFM, improved forest management, that we deal in at NativState, and most forest landowners would deal in. Okay, so try to look at those two methodologies, and that would affect most landowners. They need to know that the carbon program is not for everybody. It really relates to their management and overall goals for their property. We get a lot of people interested, and they're in the timber producing business, and they're growing trees to cut them, and that's fantastic. We need those folks. Probably not a good fit for a carbon program. They have a bunch of mountain land up in the Ozarks. It's beautiful. That's, as we say, steeper than a cow's face. Those areas would be considered inoperable, so there wouldn't be any quantifiable credits on there. There's trees on there, so they need to know there's a few little caveats when it comes to quantifying carbon credits. And the best advice I could give is just get as much information as you can and be thorough in your diligence about what kind of program that you're getting into. And realize, like I said, it's not for everybody.
And I think it's good, though, that you've kind of given us from 170 different carbon credits to two to kind of focus on and do a little bit of research on.
Yes.
And as always, something that we preach on this show pretty heavily is if you don't know, ask. Call a professional like JD or like Tim or whomever to start asking questions, get that process rolling. Because I'm sure, again, you guys do with landowners, you go out, look at their property and what they have, and then determine if it's good or not.
Correct. We've talked to over 2 million acres worth of landowners. I don't even know the number. And we've enrolled about 600 individual landowners in over 600,000 acres. But that's about 25% of the people we talk to. So that does mean, it shows it's not right for everybody. And there's a lot of information on the internet and out in the world. So be cautious, do your homework, because not all carbon credits are created equal.
Okay. And so, Tim, let's hypothetical here. I'm a landowner. I've decided that this is something that I do want to look into, or something that works for me and my property and my management goals. What's the next step? What does this next process kind of look like for a landowner?
Well, everybody wants to know how much money. That's usually the first or second question we get asked. But before that, the landowner should be able to be given an estimate of what's there. It's not practical, feasible, or financially viable to go out and actually put plots on a property. So most carbon companies have certain types of models that they can look at, combining FIA data, some imagery, and they can say, okay, it looks like, unless nothing's changed, you got this stocking level, or this, it's pine or hardwood or a combination of both. And based on this model, we estimate your revenue and how that revenue would flow for the period of the carbon agreement. And at that point, the landowner should have enough information. And of course, all of the questions that people ask about, well, what if I sell my land? What if I have a tornado? What if it all catches on fire? All those questions should be answered on the front end, because each company treats them differently. But at that point, they should be able to make a kind of a no decision as for, is this something I want to enroll in? And if they do enroll, then there would be actual, depending upon the methodology, some methodologies don't require this, but there would be actually plots measured on their property, and these plots would be more or less permanent for the duration of the carbon agreement. They'd come back and be remeasured to obviously indicate any growth or changes. And that kind of gets you started down the path of getting the project verified and having all the work checked, and on and on and on that goes into making it a project. It's actually been pretty eye-opening to me is how long that takes and how involved it is. And it has to be that way, because I can't pick up and hand JD a credit out of my pocket. I mean, I don't have something to sell him, although I wish I could. But so that quantification, that verification, that validation, all those things that go into making that carbon project add or subtract from the value of that credit. And that's real important.
And I guess it's a good thing that our folks are patient, being tree farmers of all things. It's not like corn where it grows up in a season. You got to wait a little while for a tree to get.
Most of them are patient.
But yeah, I think it's important to highlight that this is a process. Again,
it is.
Once you say yes, it might be a little bit before anything kind of happens.
It is. And why it has to be that way, obviously, like I said, is for the quantification. But so we've always long said that, you can develop all the credits in the world, but if you don't sell any, nobody's getting any benefit. So we have to take the viewpoint of the potential buyer. And these buyers are large. They are buying millions of credits. And they do some very serious due diligence on what did we do. I mean, some of these due diligence processes take over a year just to satisfy that buyer, because they're a little afraid of risk, reputational risk, or things that might affect this forest that's owned by this small private landowner in, Ouachita County. Golly, how do we know that forest is going to be there in 20 years from now or 40 years from now? So we have to address that. They address that through all the due diligence that we have to go through. And we don't mind. That is part of the business. It will be actually, the more you can, I don't want to say withstand, but the more they pry, the better it looks, because we can show them this is a quality. There are such things as low quality and high quality credits. And it's in the perception of the buyer. I mean, there's no standard out there to us to measure against, but there are some. And all the things that are put into that project that takes that time make it higher quality, and we hope higher value. And that relates to the land.
Tim, I just want to add right there that was one of the first things that impressed me about NativState when I got to know them. It was their commitment to high quality and standards, which was important to me and for my clients and landowners. If we were going to sell carbon credits, we wanted to make sure that we were adhering to the best of the best standards, because that brings value to the market. As Tim mentioned, if these companies are looking for carbon credit, they're looking to the methodology, all the audit processes, the whole program, and that takes time. I'll share that. From the time you sign up to time you might have a credit to sale, on average would be what, Tim?
2 years.
Yeah,
18 months to 2 years.
18-month to a 2-year time frame. Like you said, Seth, landowners are used to longer cycles, and even if you got a cutting agreement on some property, a lot of times those are 12 to 24-month cutting agreements, and Lord knows with our mill structure and logging structure right now, I think it's harder to monetize a load of timber right now than it is a carbon credit sometimes. But anyway, it does take a little bit of time, but quality credits are critical.
And I think too, I'm having a bit of a flashback to the last conversation you and I had, Tim, on the show, that we should kind of mention that the people who are buying these credits are large corporations, large companies, usually.
Well, yes, they have a lot of emissions, CO2 and other greenhouse gases that they are, and I'll just say this, usually carbon credits are a part of their total mitigation strategy. They don't just go buy carbon credits. We've talked to several from around the world, actually have been in Conway, Arkansas, and throughout the state visiting with us, and they have usually a 3 or 4 prong attack as to how they're going to mitigate these emissions, from changing equipment to changing their processes. But at the end of the day, they realize, and some of these are oil companies, some of these are large conglomerates of various companies. They realize there's only a certain amount they can do themselves, and they have to buy some offsets or credits. And we took a different, I don't know if it's a different approach, but we're out securing offtake agreements ahead of time so that we know it takes a while to generate the credits, to go through the process. There's a couple little procedural things in the market that we've had to deal with. It's made that time be what it is. But if at the end of that project, when that project is registered with the ACR, the American Carbon Registry, and they release credits, we have them sold. That benefits not just us, but the landowners. And we've been fortunate and truly blessed that we have been able to put money in landowners' pockets so far, and we've got a lot more to go. And but it does take time. It takes longer than I wish, but it is a process.
Okay. Well, guys, I think that's kind of a good pause point. We're going to take a little break here, and then JD kind of talk to you from a consulting side of things. But we're going to take a little break here and hear a little bit more from Neeley Forestry Service.
Since 1972, Neeley Forestry Service has been a part of forestry in Arkansas, providing a broad spectrum of services including forest management, including timber sales and silvicultural activities. With 5 registered foresters, 2 licensed certified general appraisers, 1 state-registered apprentice appraiser, and 4 licensed real estate agents on staff, Neeley Forestry Service has the experience to help landowners make the best decisions for their land. To get in touch with them, you can visit NeeleyForestryService.com or call 870-836-5981. Neeley Forestry Service, managing forests from one generation to the next.
Thank you again to Neeley Forestry Service for their support of this episode. So JD, I gave you a bit of a break in the first half of this episode, but I want to kind of focus a little bit more on the consultant side of things. And you and I had kind of spoken, and you were the one that suggested we talk about this topic. So I'm glad you're able to join us to kind of get into it. But from a consultant's perspective, why, and this may be a stupid question, but why is it ideal or good for a landowner to start looking at maybe alternate income sources than just whatever they're doing currently?
Well, it's a great question, Seth. And again, Glad to be here and excited to be able to talk about optionality for landowners. And we've just seen this evolvement in our forest for some time. As we have progressed over the last 20 years, really we have seen on the forestry side a forest that has continued to grow in supply, and it's become harder and harder to sell timber, especially on the private landowner side. And some of the supply agreements and things like that really have come to bear make it harder for us as non-industrial private landowners. We have seen, and even the industry has evolved to look for other ways to bring value to their lands besides just selling timber. And carbon is one of the ways you can look at selling something out of the forest that is not a traditional tree. We pointed out that in the first segment that this is a 40-year commitment. So again, it's not for every landowner, but for these landowners, my clients, myself, that own property, that want to have sustainable forest management under a certification program that is legacy land. It's here for me and my kids and my grandkids. It's something I want to look at. And so I'll be first to share. I've got a lot of my property in a carbon program, and that's exactly what I want. It's this blended. You think of it now. You've got two products you can sell out of the forest: carbon credit, as Tim mentioned earlier, is a registered credit. It's got a serial number. It is a commodity. I've got my pulpwood, I've got my logs, those are commodities. I can sell those. The other benefit to a private landowner, if you think of it, Tim, is our markets have shrunk for pulpwood and small chip and saw and small logs. It's hard to get $1 out of the forest until really it gets up in its 20s. And with a carbon program, you can have some income each year. And so, Tim, you might address, is it 8 inches diameter that y'all start registering a carbon credit?
Actually, 5 inches and bigger. And that's because that's what is considered merchantable. And that's kind of the additionality portion. So if a tree is not merchantable, there's no chance of it being cut down. So therefore, there's no chance of it, it's going to be there until it gets to a merchantable size. And at that time, then the landowner, they'll, from that point and larger, they'll have to make a decision, how much of this do we cut? When do we cut it? And how much is it going to get me in terms of dollars? And like JD said, for the most part, until it gets to be a saw log size, it's almost not profitable for most landowners. I mean, I know we're making general statements and cover a whole state, but in general, that's the case.
But there's certainly income at an early stage in a forest life that would not traditionally be income producing. There's hunting lease revenues that you could get, and this certainly can bring in some revenue that can help bridge that gap. So it's important to know from a landowner perspective, I've got some income. I am sacrificing something. So what am I sacrificing? Well, I am, and again, I look at it as it's a benefit too, but certification, highly important though. You now more than ever will need to be, I think a certified forest brings value to you. One, you've got to have it for the carbon credit side, have to have it. you have to be sustainably managed. So if I am a landowner, want to see my forests continue in a sustainably managed program long after I'm gone, for my kids and my grandkids, well, this program helps bring them way out into the future. I can rest assured that for my little grandgirls, that this forest will be sustainably managed long after I'm gone. So it also helps to have a good management plan. I mean, so many landowners don't realize how much loss they're having from not having a professional forester manage their property. So whether, we at Neeley Forestry or private consultant, but there's other consultants out there that, you need to be working with some forester, either some way to have a forest management program. Under a carbon program, this just comes. I mean, you're going to adhere to forest management certification. The other thing that you're sacrificing, and Tim mentioned this earlier, if I'm one of these, I want to plant and I want to harvest cut, about 26 years, 20 to 26 year rotations, this is not for you. But if you manage further out in your cycles, 40 years, 50 years in a cycle, which for me actually brings more value because we're growing a little bit better log. We like to see poles out of the forest. This longer rotation age for me and some landowners is what we are giving up, but it also brings value from the carbon side and from the wildlife side. So, you just have to look at, we mentioned this earlier, your goals and objectives. It's a perfect fit for some, and for a lot, it's not. So, dig in, do your homework. But I think it's important today just to talk about it. It's exciting, to have this in place now is another product that we can sell out of the forest.
And is that the main reason, JD, why you as a consulting firm are suggesting this as a possibility to landowners? Is that kind of the main reason?
Absolutely. It does bring value and more value revenue out of the forest from I call it levelized payment. I mean, so again, the forest can be, if I'm in the forest carbon program can be from 80-acre landowner to a 8,000-acre landowner. I mean, and Tim them have got some even a lot bigger than that. So, it's important too for landowners to know that the small acreage size still can be in a carbon program, but it's just another, again, additionality to us as the forest. That's why I'm recommending it for those that it's a good fit for.
Okay. And now, Tim, remind me, are y'all still, is NativState, do you guys still register with the tree farm program, or have y'all moved to a
We
different
have some of everything. We have tree farm, SFI, and FSC. Obviously, each one have their different standards. The more rigorous FSC, it gets the attention of some different buyers that maybe tree farm or SFI does not. So we actually today have all three. I don't know what. Don't you ask me this next year? It might look differently, but there's benefits to all three. And when, like JD said, when you're in a carbon program, you have to be in a sustainability program that addresses a function called leakage, and that ensures these carbon buyers and these carbon developers that these lands are going to be sustainably managed. It is a 40-year agreement under the ACR. That's not our choice. That's the ACR's methodology for a 40-year agreement. And we hear, I'm glad you said legacy. We hear legacy a lot. A lot of our landowners are my age, not yours, probably in their late 60s, 70s, and they think about legacy. What am I leaving behind? And what's going to be there? And I guess it gives them some comfort to know that, well, at least for the next 40 years, we'll have a growing, productive forest, and my grandkids and kids can enjoy that for whatever reasons they have. So yeah, it's pretty important. But it all goes back to that methodology. So and once again, make sure you understand how these carbon credits are being developed.
And that's something that we were kind of talking about in the break is a warning, a heads up, whatever you want to classify it as, to landowners that there are some folks out there that may not be as thorough. And maybe that's why your neighbor, his carbon credits are selling, but for some unknown reason, yours are not. It kind of goes back to the high quality credits and the low quality credits. It's just about that methodology and the work put into it.
It is. It's about methodology. It's about co-benefits. How do you actually consider co-benefits such as water and threatened and endangered species and indigenous peoples and communities and stakeholders and all the other things that could revolve around the carbon program? Or do you just develop credits and try to sell them?
I think it's important too to point out Native has got a staff of over 12 registered foresters. They've got some wildlife biologists on there, but they're out there again measuring these other things in the forest, such as endangered species and water quality protection, just wildlife in general. The other things that we would want to see in a forest management plan besides just wood productivity. And it's important for us more and more as landowners. I think we're seeing multi-use, multi-value concerns than traditional just timber revenue. And we mentioned this maybe earlier, but the certification part also brings value, not just the carbon credit, but to me selling my wood products. More and more, we've got buyers from around the world that are buying lumber, that have mills here in the United States. It might be, from Europe or from Canada, and they expect a certified forest to be able to market their products. It does bring value. So it's a dual benefit for a landowner to be under some type of forest management certification.
And that kind of goes back to a previous episode that I did with the EUDR, the European Union Deforestation Regulation Act, if memory serves. So if you're curious about that, kind of talking about this, these groups overseas wanting to see that certification in the products that are being brought over there, you can go take a listen to that episode as well. Well, gentlemen, I think this kind of brings us to the end of our episode and kind of wraps everything up. But is there anything else, though, that you guys want to say or you would like to add kind of about carbon credits as an alternate income source for potential landowners?
There's only one thing. I think there's a misconception, and I'll try to be brief, with people when they start looking at carbon, and that is that you grow trees and you just let them grow and you don't touch them. There are some like that. Like I said, they're not all created equal. But at NativState, we believe in a healthy forest as well. So you can have harvesting. Now, it's a reduced level of harvesting. It's not the high productivity harvesting that you may see on an industrial tract. But there is harvesting. There is, we may look at rotation links. We're actually doing some experimenting on marking timber differently so that we don't grow trees too big, because in Arkansas, at some markets, there's a maximum size. So we're not just sitting on our hands, but you can harvest trees. You can keep your forest healthy, because that would be really irresponsible for us to just say, okay, lock it up in a carbon program and come back in 40 years. We don't want to do that. So that is one little misconception that sometimes we run into.
Yeah, great point, Tim. And again, that's one of the main things that brought me as I looked to a carbon program. I certainly would not, as a forester, want to get involved with a program that didn't cut trees. I mean, that went against the grain of our profession, and good forest management is not walk away from it. So again, you've got continued cuts, allowable cuts. You're working with sustainability, all those things that I call it, kind of have your cake and eat it too. It really brings a lot of value, professionalism to landowners that really wouldn't have been available otherwise.
Okay. Well, and this kind of all comes back to the age-old thing that we always say: pick up the phone, call a consultant like Neeley Forestry, call a company like NativState, ask questions, see if this is right for you, see if this is something you want to invest your time and money and effort into. But just pick up the phone, make some calls, see what's out there.
And in most credit programs, there should be no cost to the landowner. Okay. That's another, I should have mentioned that earlier probably. Most, because we're aggregating small landowners and making larger projects, you need to ask about that, obviously. Is there a cost involved?
I know we're kind of getting short on time, but that's another great point Tim brought out. I had actually looked at carbon programs before NativState got on the scene, and nothing was available to small landowners and smaller, I mean by less than 10,000 acre type land ownerships, really prior to Native getting into this aggregation of smaller landowners and working a small landowner program. And so it really has opened up an opportunity for smaller landowners over the last, 5-6 years.
Okay. And I guess, that's good to point out too, is that if you are one of those smaller landowners, don't automatically write this off if you have some kind of interest in it, because there are groups that have these aggregation programs and kind of can fit that.
Every program's different. They have their own requirements, you bet.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Tim, JD, thank you. I appreciate it. And this is good. I'm always learning something new, especially when it comes to carbon credit stuff. And so I appreciate you guys joining me. And we want to thank you guys for listening as well this month. We want to give one more special shout out and thank you to Neeley Forestry Service for their support of this month's episode. And as always, we want to say thank you to some guy named Rob McCormick for the use of our theme song, The Same Love. That's off of his album, The Folkster. You can find more of his music on Spotify. And of course, we've got a link to his website where you can find music details, show details for him to catch him live and in person. So make sure you come back next month when we'll have a new topic, a new discussion, and a new Voice of Forestry.